There's a boat battery on the market right now that you can drive a nail through and it won't catch fire. There's no liquid inside it to burn. 120 amp hours in 18 pounds, about a quarter of what the lead-acid battery in your bilge weighs. One charter captain replaced 3 batteries with a single one of these and shut down the 2 300 horsepower outboards he'd been idling for years just to generate electricity. All of that is documented. But the company selling them claims 8 times the runtime of your lithium batteries, and the only figure anyone outside the company has published says double. 8 against 2. And 6 months ago, when another company made a claim like that one, the chief executive of a major battery manufacturer said flatly that the product does not exist. So which is this? Let's separate what's proven from what's marketing, work out what it actually costs, and get you the 4 questions that tell the two apart before you spend $7,000. Quick thing before we start. The batteries in this video run from $1,200 to $7,500, and that's before anyone touches your boat. The bills that really hurt aren't the parts, they're the repairs you have no way to price. That's why I wrote the Outboard Repair Defense Guide, what every common repair should actually cost, and how to spot a padded quote in seconds. $39. First link in the description. Spot one inflated estimate, and it's paid for itself many times over. Now, the batteries. Ask most people why electric boating hasn't taken over, and you'll hear about range or about price. Both are real problems, and both miss the thing that has actually held the industry back. The biggest barrier to marine electrification has not been range, or charging infrastructure, or even cost. It has been fear. And it isn't hard to understand why. Because few situations are more alarming than a fire at sea. That fear isn't superstition. It comes from chemistry. Conventional lithium-ion batteries rely on liquid electrolytes to move ions between the electrodes. Those liquids are flammable, and they can trigger thermal runaway when the battery is damaged, overheated, or charged improperly. On land, that risk is manageable because you can walk away from the vehicle and wait for the fire department. 20 miles offshore, neither of those options exist. You're standing on the only floor you have. A boat is also about the worst place you could ask a battery to live. Marine installations subject batteries to constant movement and salt exposure, and they're usually bolted into cramped spaces where heat has nowhere to go. Every one of those conditions attack the exact vulnerability that liquid electrolytes create. So boaters compensate the way boaters always have, by overbuilding, carrying more battery than they need so they never have to push any single one hard. Which brings us to the second tax nobody talks about: weight. Every pound of battery on your boat is a pound you can't spend on fuel, gear, or people. And on a small hull, it changes how the boat sits and how it rides. Lead acid was brutal for this. Lithium improved it without ever really solving it. The idea behind solid state takes one sentence to explain. You move the liquid entirely and replace it with a solid electrolyte that conducts the lithium ions, which shortens the distance between the cathode and the anode and eliminates the heavy volatile liquids and gels that lead acid and lithium ion products depend on. Take out the flammable component and the failure mode that scares people goes with it. The numbers that come out of that are the reason this video exists. The manufacturer says its solid-state marine batteries weigh roughly half what a lithium iron phosphate battery weighs, and about a quarter of an AMG. From their own product listing, a 120 amp hour battery in a standard Group 24 case at 18 pounds, a 300 amp hour in a Group 31 at 43 pounds, and a 600 amp hour in a Group 8D at 85 pounds. The big one, a 48 volt 210 amp hour pack holding 10 kilowatt hours, comes in at 100 pounds. Anyone who has wrestled an 8D into a bilge understands immediately what the last figure means. The performance claims are aggressive too. The mid-range units are rated at 1000 cold cranking amps with 210 amps of continuous discharge, and the ultra-high power version claims 500 amps continuous and up to 750 volts peak. The cases are IP67 rated, and the company says they've been tested against extreme heat, severe deformation, and puncture. Now, everything I just told you came from the people selling the batteries, and that matters more than it might sound. It isn't only this company. A Danish manufacturer says its solid-state system survived 6 times overcharging and an 8mm nail driven straight through it with no thermal reaction. An Italian firm, Sealants, quotes 245 watt-hours per kilogram on its marine pack. Impressive figures, all of them, and all of them supplied by the companies that stand to profit from you believing them. So the specification sheets are extraordinary. The question is, what happens when one of these gets bolted into a boat that has to earn its living? Captain Tristan Rains runs charters on a 32-foot CV, and his problem wasn't the outboards. It was the Seakeeper 2, the gyroscopic stabilizer that keeps the boat from rolling while his clients fish. 3 12-volt AGM Group 31 batteries fed that stabilizer, and they couldn't carry a full charter. So he did what a lot of captains do, which is burn fuel to make electricity. He ran the boat's twin 300 horsepower Mercury Verados continuously, at anchor for no reason other than to keep the Seakeeper alive. He replaced those 3 AGMs with a single 27 series solid-state battery rated at 210 amp hours. One fully charged battery now lasts an entire charter. The engines stay off. Work through what that's worth. 2 300 horsepower outboards idling for hours on every trip, burning fuel and stacking hours onto engines that cost tens of thousands of dollars to replace. All of it eliminated by one battery. The improvement isn't happening on a spec sheet. It's happening on his fuel bill and his maintenance schedule. His trolling setup told a similar story. A 36-volt Minn Kota that had needed 3 conventional lithium ion phosphate batteries and still didn't reliably last a full day, now runs on one 31 series solid-state battery with about 20% more runtime than before. Owners report the same thing. One fisherman described running his trolling motor at full power for 8 hours in 30-mile-an-hour winds and finishing the day with over 20% still in the battery, calling it straight-up game-changing. So, what does it cost? Most reviewers skip that part. Straight from the seller's own listings, the 12-volt 90 amp hour starts around $1,249. The 210 amp hour around $2,499, and the 600 amp hour around $6,499. The big 48-volt 210 amp hour pack, the 10 kilowatt hour unit, lists from $7,499. Dealer pricing runs lower in places, with one listing the 12-volt 210 at $1,799 and the 90 amp hour under $1,000 for members. Whichever number you land on, this is several times what an AGM costs, and a real premium over lithium. There's one detail buried in a boating forum that almost nobody mentions, and it will frustrate you if you don't know it going in. These batteries need voltage to fill. A company representative explained that at 14.2 volts, the battery sits at roughly 65% charged. At 15 volts, which is what Mercury Outboards put out, it reaches about 80%. So running your engine will not fully charge this battery. You need a proper charger, and that's an additional cost and an additional decision the marketing material doesn't lead with. Now, here's where the story turns, and it turns on a single number. Boating Magazine, reporting on how these perform in real use, puts the gain at roughly double the runtime of conventional lithium iron phosphate for the same weight. Double. That's a serious improvement, independently reported, and if the company advertised exactly that, this would be a much shorter video. But the company's own website makes a different claim. It says their batteries run up to 8 times longer than the leading lithium or lead acid battery. 8 times, against a reported figure of 2. Those numbers cannot both describe the same thing. Maybe the 8 refers to lead acid rather than lithium, or to cycle life rather than runtime. And if so, that's a fair explanation, and I'd say so. But the company doesn't specify. Nobody outside the company has published data supporting the higher figure, and the gap between the two is enormous. To understand why that gap matters so much right now, and why the entire battery industry is currently arguing about exactly this kind of claim, you have to look at what happened at a technology show in January. In January of 2026 at the Consumer Electronics Show, a Finnish startup called Donut Lab announced that it had done what nobody else could: a production-ready solid-state battery. The specifications were staggering. 80% charge in under 5 minutes, 100,000 cycles, and 400 watt-hours per kilogram against the 200 to 300 that typical lithium-ion delivers. Paired with an electric motorcycle from Verge, the company Donut Lab belongs to, the claims stretched further still, to 186 miles of range added in 5 to 10 minutes of charging. Consider what that announcement meant in context. Solid state is the prize the entire battery world has been pursuing. CATL, BYD, Factorial Energy, QuantumScape, companies with enormous budgets and decades of combined expertise, and not one of them has brought a true solid-state cell to market. Then a small startup with no track record in batteries walks into a trade show and says it already has. The industry's reaction was immediate. Yang Hangjin, chief executive of the Chinese battery maker S-Volt, told local media, "That battery doesn't exist in the world." He went further, saying the specifications contradicted one another and that any technician with basic knowledge would recognize the problem. It escalated from there. A whistleblower filed a criminal complaint alleging the claims were exaggerated and that the company had misrepresented its ability to reach mass production. Nordic Nano Group, a research firm that had worked with Donut Lab, went public with the same accusation. And its commercial chief, Lauri Peltola, told a Finnish newspaper, "I still firmly stand behind everything I said." A scientist, Dr. Ryan Hughes, went through the claims publicly and concluded that the battery being shown around was closer to a conventional lithium cell wearing a new label. Donut Lab pushed back. They launched a website to answer the critics and commissioned testing from VTT, the State Research Center of Finland. The first published result did confirm one thing, that a single cell could reach 80% charge in under 5 minutes at high current. And that result is the reason this story belongs in a video about boat batteries. One metric was verified: energy density, longevity, temperature tolerance, cost. None of those were covered by the published test. A company can pass a real, independent test and still leave every claim that matters unexamined. And there's no accepted framework in the industry dictating how test protocols, conditions, and raw data get shared. The result is inconsistent reporting and hype cycle. And it's why battery researchers keep repeating that extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence. Now bring that back to the water, carefully, because I want to be precise here. Donut Lab is a different company, in a different industry, and nothing about that story is an accusation against anyone selling marine batteries. But the questions it teaches you to ask apply everywhere. The marine product's chemistry isn't detailed publicly, and the 8 times claim hasn't been verified by anyone outside the company. Boaters have noticed, on a solar forum, the recurring observation is that nobody has independently confirmed the 8 times performance or 10 times lifespan figures. On another boating forum, one owner was blunter, describing it as looking like someone making quick cash with very little published data, and admitting it unnerved him to watch the guy in the next slip install one knowing nothing about it. Another boater raised the simplest objection of all. Samsung has worked on solid state for over 5 years and isn't launching until 2026 or 2027. There's also a definitional problem. Solid state remains largely in development, and plenty of products on the market use hybrid or semi-solid chemistry while borrowing the name. So the batteries in Captain Rains' boat are real, and so is the performance he measured. What's unproven is the size of the promise printed on the website, which leaves you with a practical question. So, you're standing on a dock with a credit card. Here's how you decide. 4 questions, and ask them before you buy anything sold as solid state. First, is this true solid state or semi-solid? And get the answer in writing. That word has gotten loose enough that one major brand sells a conventional lithium iron phosphate battery on Amazon with solid state printed right in the product name. Second, who tested this besides you, and which specifications did they actually measure? Donut Lab published one verified metric and left the 4 that mattered most untouched. And the battery world noticed immediately. Third, what charging voltage does this need to reach full capacity, and will my system supply it? Remember the 15 volts and 80%. Fourth, what certifications does it carry, and does it meet ABYC recommendations? If that answer doesn't come back immediately and specifically, that tells you something on its own. Now the verdict, split by who you are. Buy now if weight is genuinely costing you something. If you're consolidating a bank of trolling or house batteries, or if you're running loads at anchor the way Captain Rains was, those aren't marginal cases. Cutting 3 batteries down to 1 and shutting off 2 300 horsepower outboards that were idling purely to make electricity can pay back the premium quickly. And the doubled runtime is the one figure here reported by someone outside the company, which makes it the one you can lean on. Wait if the 8 times figure is what sold you, because nobody has verified it. If your insurer or surveyor will want certification paperwork, wait for that paperwork. And if the seller can't answer those 4 questions cleanly, walk, because a company confident in its chemistry has no reason to be vague about it. As for the title of this video, here's the honest resolution. Having the weight of a boat's batteries and removing the fire risk from them is not a small change. That genuinely does change boating. And the technology behind it is real. Whether this particular company delivers it at the scale its website claims is a question nobody outside that company has answered yet. Both of those things are true simultaneously, and knowing which is the entire skill. If a real independent test of these batteries gets published, I'll cover it here. Until then, the 4 questions are what you've got. Because that's the pattern this channel keeps running into. The engineering is usually real. The exaggeration lives in the marketing department. Your job was never to become a battery chemist. It's to ask which claims somebody independent has actually checked, and to notice when the answer is nobody at all.